Hello, Ian Frantz here. I wanted to do a book review on Nail It and Scale It. The subtext is The Entrepreneur's Guide to Creating and Managing Breakthrough Innovation. It's by Nathan Furr and Paul Ahlstrom. It's a great book. It is a fantastic book. I got so much out of reading this, and I have about 4 or 5 pages of notes to kind of go through the material that's in the book. Now, a little bit about the authors. Nathan is a PhD from Stanford University's Technology Ventures program. He's also the entrepreneurship professor at Brigham Young University. He has a focus on market development and early enterprise lean startups. And Paul Ahlstrom is an investor. He's invested over $400 million in 100 plus startups. He also helped take what was initially myfamily.com and turn it into ancestry.com. So these guys are pretty well versed in technology, and it's one of the main reasons that I like the book. Every example in the book is really based in technology. Most of them are based in software, but all the examples are actually based in technology. I don't think there's a single example in this book of a company that wasn't a tech related company that they talk about. So, the nail it, then scale it approach takes you through 5 phases, but I'm going to take you through the book in the order that the book presents the material. So there's actually about 65 pages before you ever even get to stage one, which is nail it. So I want to talk about what's in those first 65 pages and several chapters because I think the material in there is very valuable. The first thing they bring up early on in the book, around page 8 or so, is how entrepreneurs are often held back by their strengths. That they have an idea, and this is really just a guess about what customers want. So they kind of go into the market, and whether or not customers buy or not is more based in just random probability than it is around solving a pain point for the customer. So they talk about a lot of that building up to the first nail it phase, and they call it midnight genius. That's where the entrepreneur has an idea. Then they have the American Idol stage where they discuss it and they raise money from friends, family, and fools. Then they go into feature lock-in stage, which is find a location, develop a product, and then the escalation of commitments. So they perfect the product and the features for a broader appeal, and then they go into a sales pipeline problem, which is where they try to sell the product, and then it ends with Russian roulette, whether or not customers actually buy that product after following those steps or not. So that's early on, and then they cover a lot of categories in the book, everything from issues around team sizes to customer panels, thinking traps and biases, capital increases in VC rounds of funding, when companies have loose purse strings around their products, what kinds of things, what kind of problems and things can you look for there. So there's a lot of content in here that's not really even geared towards just specifically the phases of nail it, then scale it. So let's go through the phases that they lay out, which, of course, number one is nail the pain. So their emphasis is that your focus on customer pain should be so specific that a cold call would get returned. That customer feels that pain so acutely that they would be willing to return a cold call of someone offering a solution for it. And they actually suggest this as one of the tests to make sure that you're meeting the customer's pain in phase one with your idea. They have tests all throughout the book, and they emphasize that doing these gets you away from the guesswork. So it also tells you if it's a small amount of customer pain that they're not really feeling that they would return a cold call, then maybe it's too narrow, and that's going to affect buyers eventually. So that means too few people would actually buy your product in the end. So make it your time before you get started. Invest in doing the customer-based research to make sure that you're focused on the pain of solving that customer's problem. They say not to take secondary research as any kind of validation. And one of the things that I do for my measures here, and one of the things I would suggest is if you can find it, look for things that the prospects would actually say about their own pain. So instead of uh, going in and asking them directly, look around and see if you can find places where they might describe their pain, um, potentially in online forums, or if you can get RFPs that have been issued around what you're trying to solve, you can look in those for different areas of customer pain. So I do try to find out what the pain points are for customers in developing solutions. Phase two is to nail the solution, which is a focus on the minimal viable product and feature set. This makes sure that you have a monetization path. So when you're focused on the minimal viable product, um, you're looking to get some of your early conversions here. And one of the things to do when you get those early conversions is start looking at key themes of people who would be willing to buy, or who give you a, I shouldn't say conversion, because actually they say, they look at the interest to buy, sort of the promise to buy. And uh, they do encourage, look at the themes though of the people who are talking about that. So I wanted to read, this is page 99. I wanted to read this quote from Steve Jobs in here that really stuck out to me. It says, "You can't just ask customers what they want and then try to give that to them. By the time you get it built, they'll want something new." So they focus on rapid iteration when you're building your first minimal viable product or feature set that you're about to release and charge money for. Go through a lot of rapid iterations with that. Um, and I wrote down one of the things that stuck out to me here is there's a big assumption around this step, which is that customers know and can express their pain. While I think that is good for the current workable state that you're in, I believe that that is for a future state prediction not a very good indicator, because the only thing the customer can tell you about their pain is what they're able to express, which relates to where they generally are, not where they will be. So I just throw that in there as something to watch out with, following the entire method. If you're trying to build something that is really future focused, customers might not actually know that they have a pain problem quite yet. So you might be tapping into something like that early, but the customer doesn't have the ability to express that. Data cleanup is one that stands out to me. That of all the things you're trying to integrate around data and integration services, real big pain point there is somebody still has to clean up that data. And now everyone's kind of familiar with this as a task, but early on it was not seen as being as much of a pain point as it actually is, because you might get raw data, you might get some clean data. What do you do once you do have empty or missing sets? So that is a big pain point for integration points. Okay, so they talk about how to interview the customers also at this stage, and you should be trying to understand and show your solution and testing the customer demand. You're not selling. You're avoiding selling. What you're really trying to do is making sure you've got the facts right. You're not trying to prove your case. You want, if the facts are telling you don't go down this path, then if you're getting that kind of market feedback, then don't go down that path. So this is about verification of that you're doing the right thing before you really start getting into the later phases. Because they bring up a pretty funny point in here that if they aren't willing to pay now, they probably won't pay later. So that goes into phase 3, which is nailing the go-to-market strategy. This is the process by which customers find out and purchase your solution. That's the go-to-market strategy. This involves everyone from internally within your company, what you can do within your company walls, to how do you work with a partner? How do you get a relationship with an influencer? How do you go towards advertising, marketing, social engagements? And then how do you really get into targeting that customer? So it talks about all those and how to apply those kinds of techniques, how to manage those customer relationships. The big difference is, and I think this is missed on a lot of different people with clients, is that you have your reference customers and you have your pilot customers. So your reference customers are, of course, out there being vocal proponents of what it is that you sell. They're really your chosen, cultured, spread the word group. And then your pilot customers are the ones that you're engaging in as you build the product. So they're actually providing you with the most valuable feedback as far as enhancements. And when you do the rapid iteration testing, you want to verify what you just did with your pilot customers, not really with your reference customers. So they are related, but I do think that distinction between customer relationships and how you manage those two groups is really important when you're bringing especially a new product out onto the market. Phase 4 is nail the business model. There's a really funny pets.com opening, which people my age remember and people will remember from their Super Bowl. It's a well-known .com total flop, but they actually had some of the numbers in there, which was the first time I'd seen them, around how they were selling products for 1/3 of the price that they were buying wholesale. They were shipping for free, and their advertising was pretty wild. And they talked about, they're shipping for free, heavy bags of cat litter at 1/3 of the price. Your numbers don't really add up if you do that consistently. So there's a big part of this chapter on the business model on critical thinking, and I'd like to read this excerpt from it was just from there.com. Eric Rise. We didn't fail to execute the plan. That was not our issue. We had a flawless execution. We were very rigorous about making sure that we hit deadlines and that we did what we said we were going to do, and we made the plan. And there's no reason why we were able to execute. And there's a reason why we were able to execute that good plan. We held everybody accountable for doing really good work. The only problem is we didn't have a mechanism for asking ourselves, is this plan any good? Is it worthwhile to advance it? So that critical thinking component around what you're about to do with your business model, these kinds of plans, like we'll offer shipping for free. Sort of revisiting that, it really goes into then some ways to ensure that your margins, your fixed cost, your customer acquisition costs are in a stable place, that you can do that safely. And it talked about Webvan, which was a grocery delivery, also out of business .com startup that was in a low margin business. The grocery retail business is not very much a high margin business. I think in the book it says you can expect somewhere between like 2 and 4% on margins in grocery items. But they had a very high customer acquisition cost. I think I wrote down $210, and then their delivery of an item um, was like $81, and they're already in a low margin business. So again, the numbers just didn't add up there. So you want to make sure that your business model is very solid before you move into trying to scale it and grow it, which is phase 5, scale it. And they make a point to say this isn't just turn the crank approach. Now you really have to start doing things differently when you scale your business. Because as an entrepreneur, you're facing unknown problems and solutions that require exploration. This is definitely the camp that I'm in, that I just love doing that. I love finding things that are unknown and making them known. But when you scale an entire business, now you're facing known problems, known solution, and execution is actually required. So you're leaving a bit of that entrepreneurship, and they give several examples of people who have made really successful startups that once the business got to this point, they were either asked to leave or retired or voted out. So that happens because there's a phase for the entrepreneur, and then there's a scaling it that's a more of a execution based approach. So there's another section I'd like to read in here in this chapter from Mark Richards, and he says, so many startups think the first step of their business is to create a new category name for what they do and then declare themselves world leader. And of course, the founders all fall in love with the category and their new world domination. But in the meantime, prospective customers go to the website and have no idea what the world leader in some cryptic category like geosocial curation actually does, or why they should take the time to read more. Then guys like me have to come along and apply the nail it, then scale it process in retrospect, trying to get them on a Kool-Aid free diet for a while with a big helping of customer data. So this chapter also goes into lean methods with a focus on your metrics, cost recovery models versus investment models. And the book, although that closes the 5 phases, the book then has 2 subsequent chapters that deal with context, how to use context in your business. And then the final chapter in the book is around crises that happen within an industry or within a company, and how a good crisis can reinvigorate some of the things that are all talked about through the book. But there's a tendency that once you get past scaling your business and now the purse strings are very loose and you've got all these different you're spending so much money and you're not really sure where it's going, and then all of a sudden you can't pay your rent anymore and you have to kind of scale back and refocus on maybe what your core business lines were. It gives a lot of software examples and things that have had to do that. So those are 2 good chapters as well. The appendix of the book actually closes with a checklist that'll take you through many of the things within the process itself. And I really enjoyed reading it. I mean, there are so many pages in here that I have underlined, circled, put little bullets next to. There's some really funny things that, if you've just been around technology for a while and you can remember Thresh, he was a Quake 2 player who won a Lamborghini. They talk about Thresh and his attempts to create a company that an online gaming service that you would pay to play against opponents. The only problem was everyone would lose money because the stronger opponents would win, so people wouldn't return. And what he basically found was that one of the pain points in online gaming was communication, especially at that time. I remember that's like right before Quake 3 came out, and so he saw he had the idea to build a in-game communication channel software, and he did really well with that. So yeah, just if you're in product management, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're just wanting to know how do you take an idea, get it to market, this is a fantastic book. Highly recommend it. I would give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. So I hope you'll enjoy reading it as much as I did. Take care.